So the scope of the use case started off as total cost of ownership across our application estate for the IT element of what we run in the bank. And that was to feed into the application portfolio management, primarily to feature in things like technology lifecycle management for the currency of various applications, operational risk and readiness, and the ability to plan strategically and ensure that we had value for money and return on investment. So those are the initial use cases that we needed total cost of ownership to deliver against. And what we discovered off the back of that, once we had completed our first iteration of total cost of ownership, we got an awful lot more than we bargained for. We discovered a lot of heritage and legacy information that we could potentially rationalize. We were able to radically simplify our application estate, reduce it dramatically. We were able to put together cost-saving initiatives, which allowed us to save money straight away. We were able to review and optimize relationships with vendors. So it became a great success. Maybe a little bit too much of a success. We kind of had to stop what we were doing and concentrate on all of the opportunities we'd identified. And now we're going back to revisit that and try and move further down the journey and securing and operationalizing that total cost of ownership. One of the things it does particularly well, which possibly isn't something that's advertised as much, is it shines a mirror on what you're doing yourself internally and whether you can answer all of the questions that are required to deliver against that TCO model. So it gives you a very strong sense of how well set up you are to answer what's required of the model. Once you deliver against that and the model actually gives you output, you're able to then apply that to each of your business divisions, your technology divisions, your application estate, your domains, in a way that you then have empirical data that you've never had before. And as a result of that, it moves all of your debates around chargeback and cost and strategic investment from being, a subjective, emotional debate to being much more objective with figures that you can track and trace and justify. So it becomes a much more data-driven decision. In fairness, I wouldn't say it's missing functionality or there's so much functionality available within Apptio. Sometimes it can be daunting and a bit of a relentless search to try and guide your way through it unassisted. Now you do learn a lot by doing that, but it's time consuming. And you can lift the phone and ask for guidance and it'll be provided, but you don't learn as much in doing that. So there's a degree of growth that's required in using the product so that you become more experienced and more mature in how you can actually apply the functionality of the product to the questions that you have at hand. Because the amount of time it takes to explain your problem or the context of it to somebody from Apptio, for example, for them to apply their skill set to get you the solution, you could probably have done it yourself if you knew where to look better. So there's a degree of continual education and guidance required around that, which is provided, but you have to ask for it. People aren't necessarily in the habit of doing that. Well, considering they asked me along to do a keynote speech this morning about our journey and how successful it's been, pretty high to recommend that, So I'd say that's a solid 9 out of 10. So the well-suited element of it is around the empirical data usage for, clinical business cases where you have to make a decision around investment, tracking return on investment, what our current cost and ownership is. Some of the areas where it's kind of less suited is where you have much more of a debate around, the data can show you one thing where this costs a lot of money, it's almost out of support, it isn't the right thing to do. But the reality is there are other factors at play which can't be captured by data. The fact that certain systems, for example, may be entirely proprietary. We own the full IP on them. We have the experience and expertise to monitor and maintain them internally. So you do have to add that additional lens to it to say, does the data tell the full story, or is there an additional element that we need to provide context to so that you can understand what needs to be made here? The good thing about Apptio, though, is that no other approach can answer that question for you anyway. You can't. Only the organization itself can answer those questions. Apptio nails the data part, and that's normally the hardest part of that journey. So. Well, we're relatively new at the beginning of our journey. We haven't matured very much yet. So we use the flexible reporting element of things. That's the only part of that we're using. We do have a roadmap as to how we would get to where we need to be to use each of those additional added benefit features. And we've certainly learned a lot from the conference this week about how to do that, the experiences of other users, and the role that, for example, the TBN Council can play in trying to help us through that. So it's given us a bit of assurance around how we can get there, but we're not there yet. It's delivered on a lot of those, especially the relationship between the IT and finance and the business. that relationship's been a bit of a roller coaster on that journey. We've come out the other end of it and we're all friends now, which is a good thing. So they've accepted the Apptio output and are much more involved in providing the data and helping to use the tool as well, which is great. I think one of the downsides that's probably not talked about enough is the fact that once you have trained and delivered a TBMA skill set within your organization, and they become very good at that. So if you've got any high performing members in that team, they become extremely valuable elsewhere. And we've unfortunately suffered the case whereby one of our highest performers was immediately then poached and went off elsewhere for a much better opportunity. So we applaud that for them, but it's really hard to train other people. You know, it's really hard to take them up to speed, and you have to sort of go through those peaks and troughs every time that happens. So that's just life, you know. Oh, it's 10 out of 10. They've been great. They've been there for everything we have at the minute. I think a lot of the frustration people have with them is that they want you to answer questions that only you can answer about your own organisation. Can't really put the blame on Apptio for that one, you know. You can't say to them, how should I weight these allocations? You know, from finance to go, well, that's kind of on you. You know, I can't tell you how to do it. They can provide you with examples of how other peers in the industry might do that, but that's not yours. So, yeah, it can be somewhat frustrating at times, but all of that frustration is because of your own limited ability to articulate your organization in a way that you've never had to before. It's been very good, yeah, to the extent that now that we've lost some of our TBMA capability, we've had to go back to Apptio and employ a managed service capability in order to be able to continue to deliver on our demand. Well, we know we will have the synergies between them, especially with the likes of cloudability that allows us to enable that FinOps space. We will have the automated capability of that feeding through into Apptio One as well, but we're just not there yet because we're just starting that journey. So we've evaluated Evolution, the Abacus suite. We have looked at Lean AX, and we looked at another few which weren't really in the same space at all. Those were the only sort of three serious competitors that we took to, an internal assessment, and Apptio won that hands down. So. Well, Apptio came out of the gates very hot and made a very brash claim that they would deliver a working proof of concept in 4 weeks with any data that we could provide them. Kind of called their bluff on that. We definitely won't be able to do that. Here's the data. And they delivered the proof of concept in 4 weeks to 85% level of accuracy, and the rest of them could not do that. So that's kind of what won it, you know. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of exceeded them, so I would say yes, but they're underselling themselves. It actually did. So that's a rarity in this game, you know. I certainly would. Yeah. Highly likely to recommend Apptio to friends and colleagues. An example of other areas where we've had similar conversations: ServiceNow as our CMDB and ticket management platform, Clarity as a PPM platform, Microsoft Dynamics 365 as a CRM platform, all of which then we're building feeds into Apptio directly from in order to consume the information.